Content is intended to provide accurate information, however, is not intended as financial, tax, or legal advice. Please consult a financial, legal, or tax professional for specific information regarding your individual situation. Opinions expressed and provided are for general informational purposes only and should not be considered a solicitation for the purchase or sale of any security.
Welcome to Game Plan for Retirement with Chris Mcintire. McIntyre Retirement Services, Northwest Ohio's retirement planning resource.
And welcome into the program. This is your Game Plan for Retirement with Northwestern Ohio's resource for the information and the guidance that we need to navigate this crazy financial and economic world. He is Chris Mcintire, president and founder of McIntyre Retirement Services, helping to put together our game plan for retirement. Chris, welcome back into the program.
Hi, Peter. Good to be back. Happy Father's Day to you. Happy Father's Day to all our listeners out there. And I hope you and Braxton get out and play some catch here this weekend. I understand he's quite the pitcher.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And yeah, it's funny the difference between Mother's Day and Father's Day. Mother's Day, my wife said she wanted to do absolutely nothing that involved kind of the regular routine, no activities with the family. It was her day. And then Father's Day weekend, we have a baseball tournament. And she's like, well, what do you want to do? I was like, there's nothing I'd rather do than hang out at the ballpark and watch my kid play. So just some different ideas of what the days mean for us, I guess. But we're kind of like that on birthdays too, come to think of it. But anyway, Chris, I appreciate it. And yes, happy Father's Day to all of the dads out there in our listening audience, and might talk about a couple topics that are pertinent to dads in particular, or protecting our family. But Chris, today we want to talk about this checklist that you have, and you're going to make available to listeners to the program if they'd like to give a call, for the 10 steps to prepare for retirement. And we've talked about my fondness for checklists, Chris. So making sure that we're getting all of the things done that we need to do. This checklist will give us a leg up in being prepared for retirement. And ladies and gentlemen, if you'd like to get this checklist, you can go over it on your own time. The 10 steps to prepare for retirement. Give a call, 800-868-1194. That's 800-868-1194. But Chris, in my mind, I'm thinking about retirement. Where do I start?
Well, want to start with defining what is the budget going to be like? What are you going to have coming in? What are you going to have going out? Is there a surplus or a shortfall? And if there is a shortfall, how do you make up for that shortfall? And typically pulling out of some sort of investment portfolio, annuity, whatever type of accounts that you're into. That would be step number one, defining the budget, what's coming in versus what's going out.
Yeah. Well, and in my budgeting world, Chris, I kind of do this a couple different ways. I look at my obligations, kind of the line item bills that I know I'm going to have to cover each and every month. But then when I compare that to how much we actually spend as a household, that's usually about a half to 2/3 of what our monthly expenditures actually are. So as we're preparing for retirement, we sort of need to have maybe two numbers in mind, would you say? Kind of subsistence, baseline, essential expenses, and then lifestyle. Do we need to think about both of those numbers?
Yeah, we certainly do, Peter. Obviously, if you're, going into the retirement side of things, that's a whole different change in the mentality and, and understanding what are the basic expenses versus, all right, we're going to spend winter down in Florida every other year. And, so those are some added pleasurable expenses that aren't necessarily living expenses, unless you plan on doing that, buying a second home or something along those lines, but you also need to know, okay, where is my guaranteed income coming in to help offset those expenses? It's a Social Security strategy or a pension of some sort for what we call the guaranteed sources of income. Husband and wife could certainly, have two sources of Social Security plus some pension incomes. And then, what is the gap between what you need to spend to fulfill those monthly expenditures on the baseline expenses versus the guaranteed income that's coming in? We call that defining the income gap. And that's a very big piece. Is that gap $1,000 a month or is it $3,000 a month? And where do you make up that difference from? If you've got an investment portfolio, the traditional 401k, retirement lifestyle 2025 fund, for example, is that an income generating portfolio, or was that just a default when you checked it off on the box on the 401k many years ago?
Yeah. So Chris, if I'm looking at my expenses, at my line item budget, and I say, hey, to run the family household here, it takes $4,000 a month, $48,000 a year, and between my wife and I, we've got, let's call it $40,000 a year of Social Security income. No pensions in my household, unfortunately, but that's an $8,000 income gap as you're talking about it. However, when I look back at what we actually spend, it's closer to like $6,000 a month. So now we're $72,000 a year to cover those. That's more like a $24,000 a year income gap, which is a big difference. And we probably need to identify that going into this equation, this math of figuring out if we're ready to retire.
And in today's very low interest rate environment, generating income has also been a challenge like no other time. It's not like you can put money in a CD at 5% and live off of the interest. I mean, they're paying 0.5% if you're lucky right at the moment. And, same with the bond market, lower interest rates as all these companies have refinanced their debt obligations at lower interest rates, which means lower rates of return for investors. So you have to look at dividends. You have to look at, maybe some real estate holdings within your portfolio, or, do you buy an annuity that will give you an income for life, might have a cost of living adjustment in it with a portion of your retirement nest egg to cover those basic living expenses. And in some cases, obviously, insurance companies have been doing this lifetime income business forever, right? They insure you if you die too soon, or they insure your income if you live too long. So, for them, it's nothing new. They've been doing this forever and ever.
So, Chris, that's a way to sort of take some assets that may otherwise have risk attached to them and potentially risk attached to the income that they generate, and kind of push those back over into the side that you talked about with the guaranteed sources of income.
Yeah, absolutely, Peter. And offset that risk
Okay.
to, like an insurance company, if you will. And, there's many different types of annuities out there. We've done shows and had discussion on these. We, in our practice, are typically going to use the traditional fixed annuity or the fixed index annuity. And some of them will also have an income element as well. So you can continue to keep the money growing while drawing a portion of that income or a portion of that money off for the rest of your life. And then obviously a survivor benefit for you and your spouse as well.
Now, Chris, just because we're moving into retirement, the old adage of don't put all your eggs in one basket, it doesn't change. And what you're talking about here is creating some diversity with our sources of income. So now we've got Social Security, we've got the pension, we've maybe got our personal annuity that we purchased and deposited, 3 different sources of paychecks that are coming in each month. And that can provide us some additional security. And oh, by the way, with each one of those, we want to try to find the best bang for the buck, sitting down and thinking about how to claim and collect that pension, when and how to claim and collect Social Security, and then maybe what additional products go into creating any additional guaranteed income we need. That's part of the process there at McIntire Retirement Services.
Yeah, Peter, doing an overview, spreadsheeting out some of these different options that folks have is obviously in their best interest, making some informed decisions, and it's never clearly right or wrong. If you do this strategy, it's right. If you do this strategy, it's wrong, because none of us know how long we're expected to live. You make your best guess scenarios and, try to have some flexibility for all the things that can happen in life, and a lot of those are health circumstances, of course.
Yeah, well, we'll talk about that. You've got another great report, the 4 approaches to long-term care, which on Father's Day weekend here, talking about that, Chris, I know that as a guy, I'm invincible. It's never going to happen to me. Not something I may address due to my own concern for myself, because worst case scenario, I can take a long walk in the woods and survive off tree bark. But it is something that I would probably choose to address when I think about the burden that it may place on my family. And I think that's the reason why you would want to.
Yeah, I have a good perspective on that. Nothing ever happens bad to men. We live forever.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Every Superman has his kryptonite, though, Chris. So,
Absolutely.
well, number 5 on this list here, the 10 steps to prepare for retirement. And again, ladies and gentlemen, if you would like this list, it's a great line by line, item by item checklist of the things that you need to do in order to prepare for retirement, a little bit of information on each one of the items to get you thinking about what this means. Do I have this one addressed? If you'd like the checklist, pick up the phone, give a call. If your family, if your spouse, if your father, if your children, if they've been talking about retiring, if a coworker has mentioned it to you, maybe a great thing to put in their hands to get them thinking about all of the right things in order to be well prepared for retirement. So give a call, 800-868-1194, 800-868-1194. If you'd like this list, the 10 steps to prepare for retirement. If you'd like to formulate your answers to any of the items on this checklist, you can sit down with Chris Mcintire, qualified, experienced professional here in the area, local, accessible, and somebody who helps to create and craft these plans for many savers and investors who are taking their planning and their financial future seriously all across Northwestern Ohio. He does offer that as well. In fact, that's the true value of tuning into the program right now, is that you can get your game plan for retirement put together. Just give a call, 800-868-1194, 800-868-1194. But Chris, number 5 on this list, formulate an income plan. And that's really kind of where you bring all 4 of those first things together. Now, along with this list, you had sent over a recent article from Market Watch, and it basically outlined that we could potentially be facing a worst case scenario. And they warned retirees that are basing their retirement planning projections on the 4% rule, a worst case scenario, perfect storm for the 4% rule. You mentioned the low interest rates, and we've seen fantastic markets over the last decade plus 12 years. Why are they giving this kind of dire warning about the 4% rule, Chris?
Well, in many cases, the 4% rule came in 1994 in an entirely different interest rate landscape, for one thing. But also, as we look forward, the growth that, many of the professional organizations are forecasting is minimized greatly than what we've had since basically the 2008 financial crisis. You look at the stock market and it's done incredibly well, and most people are basing their retirement off of what happened in the last 6 months should be what the next 6 months look like, and in 6 months and beyond. And you certainly cannot go into that. We call those hope and a prayer portfolios. Well, I'm just hoping and praying that everybody was right and the market averages 11% over my retirement. And you and I have made a number of analogies here that, an 11% average rate of return doesn't mean your account goes up 11% every single year.
Right. And in fact, we've looked at charts looking back over the last 100 years, and they say past performance can't guarantee future results. But certainly we see some trends and some patterns that about every 7 years, the market does have a downturn. And on average, those downturns have been a loss of about 40%. And so over the course of a 25, 30, 35-year retirement, Chris, we may see 3, 4, 5 of those kind of market cycles. We have not seen one in a while, but they take some time to recover from. And I'm not sure that most retirees out there want to leave their assets and their income base exposed to the potential for 3, 4, 5, 30, 40, 50% downturns over the course of their retirement.
Yes, Peter. And, we call these kind of the risk adjusted analyses that we do. And, for somebody that's very heavily in equities, hey, that might have been great while you were putting money into the stock market and doing dollar cost averaging and buying more when prices are low, buying fewer shares when prices are high. It's the exact opposite in retirement when you're pulling money out of those portfolios, right? You're exacerbating the drawdowns because you're pulling another 4% using the 4% rule. I'm withdrawing 4% of my nest egg every year and adjusting that for inflation. And we call it the law of large losses. And if the market falls by 40%, it's got to recover by 60% so that you have your money back again. So building a portfolio for your investment strategies that is probably has a better risk scenario than just 100% in equities, so that you can, mitigate some of those large drawdowns. One of the biggest risks that you're going to face in retirement.
Yeah, Chris, you hear a lot of advisors, financial institutions saying that they give unbiased opinions. Not to put words in your mouth or back you into a corner, but it seems to me like on this program and through the course of getting to know you, you do have some biases, and it seems like your bias has always been, at least to me, my perception is that we should not take unnecessary risk or exorbitant risks with money that we are going to depend on for income once we retire, at least, not in the 5 to 10 years or so before retirement, and certainly not once we are depending on that money to create us that income. I mean, again, not to put words in your mouth, but would you agree that that's sort of your position?
Oh, certainly, and with experience comes wisdom, I guess, since you're, putting out some compliments there. I appreciate all of that. And we have gotten to know each other well over the years. We've always been an advocate for having a safe money strategy, so that when the risk strategy isn't panning out and the market goes down significantly, that you can shift over and pull money out of what was your safe strategy, where you didn't have the losses that your growth portfolio did. And that certainly is, I think, been a very good niche in our practice, and, developing some alternative income plans as well that we utilize. Again, I guess, Peter, being independent gives us the ability to probably look across the spectrum of all of the available options for people without having the corporate bias saying, well, we've got a special relationship with mutual fund company A, so we want you to push mutual fund company A. Our clients pay us to manage their assets, so we don't have any conflicts of interest within that. That's the only place where our compensation comes from. And, we do a fair amount with life insurance companies. So yes, we do earn some commissions on that side of the thing, on that side of our practice. But that money also comes from the insurance company, not directly from the client.
But that's where the unbiased part is. You don't have one way or another that you are forced or told or directed to lead your clients. You keep that open mind. But number 6 on your list here of the 10 steps to prepare for retirement, maybe it's not take no risk, but it's certainly not you must be invested in mutual funds and take the full risk of the market. Chris, you just want your clients to understand their risk exposure. Item number 6 on the checklist.
Absolutely. And then also to, continue with your portfolio that is built around your overall risk tolerance, keeps you from making all those emotional decisions. The market had a bad month. Okay. Do we need to go into cash? And, hey, we deal with clients of all different shapes and sizes, let's be honest. And some of them want to get out at certain times. Some of them want to get back in at certain times. And, it's hard to time the market. You're going to do better with having your money invested in a portfolio around your risk tolerance, rebalance, and then have alternative strategies just in case things don't go as planned inside the risk portfolio. You can go over here and rely on some safe money that you've created.
Number 7, calculate taxes. Now, Chris, we've talked about living off of this income, and in our working years, usually the taxes have already been taken out. In retirement, that's a very different scenario, and we're looking at a lump sum, overlooking the tax aspect, the implications, the bill that we'll have when we make those withdrawals could be a gross planning oversight and mistake.
Sure, Peter. And you were talking earlier that, if you get to 2 people making $2,000 a month on Social Security, that's $48,000 a year. If they need $60,000, okay, all right, of that Social Security benefit, how much of that do they have to pay tax on that they don't get to keep? Okay. And then if they got to make up for a shortfall and pull money out of the 401k, and they need that $12,000 coming out of the 401k, which isn't a significant amount of money. Okay? But you also have to factor in income taxes. It's more than 12,000 because you have to pay, 10, 12% tax on that on the federal side. Maybe you live in a municipality that taxes your income. The state of Ohio taxes income as well. So, you have to pull out 16% more than what you thought just to satisfy 12% for the Fed, 4% for the state.
But when you're formulating the income plan, when you're looking at retirement, Chris, obviously this is going to be an important aspect. And with all the talk of changes in taxes, probably not something that we just set and forget and believe is always going to be the same on autopilot, something that we'll have to continue to pay attention to. Correct?
I would certainly agree with that. We're hearing some of the rhetoric coming out of the powers that be in Washington, D.C. to stay away from the politics of all of it, but talking about, estate taxes, capital gains taxes, the Trump income taxes sunset in 2025. So we know we're going to have increasing income taxes if they aren't made permanent or extended. Most tax rate legislation is not permanent. It has a sunset provision, and the tax cuts from President Trump will expire in 2025. The 12% tax bracket goes to 15, so we've got a couple of big ones. The 22% bracket goes to 25. So some pretty big changes potentially coming down the road. Let's leave it at that.
Consolidate like qualified accounts. Now, Chris, we've talked about don't put all your eggs in one basket, but this can help with fees. It can help with risk exposure. It can help make sure that you don't have duplication. And where does consolidating accounts and maybe just help with a little bit of tracking and housekeeping, tidying up this situation, where does that not conflict with don't put all your eggs in one basket? Is this conflicting information or not?
Oh, no, not by any stretch of the imagination, Peter. So let's say somebody is here retired from the Whirlpool Corporation here in Clyde, Ohio, and they have a 401k. Okay? And then let's say that they had, worked somewhere else prior to that, and they had a 401k there, and then they did some IRA investing on their own. So they have an IRA and two 401ks. If they were going to turn 72 where they had the required minimum distributions, they have to take money out of each of those plans because they're different plans. If they merge them all into one or two IRAs, it's very common for our clients to have, one or two IRAs that might have one with TD Ameritrade and another one with, maybe the local bank, maybe an insurance company that we do some business with. They might have a Roth IRA, so you can't obviously combine your Roth IRAs to your traditional IRAs. But we have some clients that say, you know what, when I retire to my 401k, my Whirlpool stock, I want to keep that. Okay. But I also want to build a diversified portfolio in my IRA. So sometimes you can build that, a number of different strategies within one account. And it's just one you have to maintain. And then you can determine, if you're going to start drawing income off of it. Are you going to sell the stock, or are you going to sell some mutual funds to create the income? So,
by consolidating these accounts, Chris, can you actually sometimes improve diversification? I mean, oftentimes we talk about duplication of the same funds or the same holdings across different accounts. That might not be helping your diversification.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And, like we said here at the earlier part of the show, many of those 401ks have by default gone into those retirement lifestyle funds. So like, with us, we're pretty big on, the environmental, the social, and the governance type of investing, ESG investing, so we can create an ESG portfolio in someone's IRA and then maybe buy them a number of dividend paying stocks, for example, to create dividends. So there's some, better, broader diversification with some specific themes within one portfolio titled under one account number. So it can certainly make things easier. And, if we're going to do an annuity for somebody, that's going to be through an insurance company. So that would be a separate IRA account. And the flexibility there is when they hit age 72, they can determine if they have 2 or even 3 IRA accounts, where they can draw that IRA money from. They can pull it, since they're all 3 IRAs, they can take it from each of them or aggregate them and just take it out of one.
Okay, so again, this can help with processing of things. This can help with your housekeeping, keeping things just a little easier to keep track of. And if you want to keep track of your progress toward retirement, this checklist is a great way to do that. Making sure that you've got all of these items addressed. If you'd like this list of the 10 steps to prepare for retirement, pick up the phone, give Chris Mcintire and Mcintire Retirement Services a call. They can provide you with this list. You can go over it on your own time with your spouse, with your loved ones, with your family, parents, children. If they're thinking of retiring, a coworker who has mentioned it, this list would be a valuable item to place in their hands so that they know what they need to address to be prepared for retirement. So you can get the list, or you can talk with Chris and formulate your answers to these 10 items with the game plan for retirement planning strategy session. To get that game plan for retirement in your hands, or to get the list, pick up the phone, give a call, 800-868-1194, 800-868-1194. Another one we're hearing a lot about right now, Chris, we've got to think about this. And I know there at Mcintire Retirement Services, you actually have been talking about this for quite some time and building this factor, inflation, into the income plans for your clients. Now, there's several ways to do this, Chris, but a lot of people's plans do not consider and address inflation. And that's probably another common retirement planning oversight that you encourage people to think about and address.
Yeah, I give the example of my father-in-law, retired at age 49. He's now 92. He still gets the same exact pension payment, basically, 42 years later that he was getting. And if
Wow.
inflation was only 3%, he's basically lost, got essentially 50 to 80% of the purchasing power of his money, not having a cost of living adjustment, because now what was gas, 40 years ago compared to where it is today. So, and even the Federal Reserve, to put it into 2021 terms here, Peter, the Federal Reserve has come out and said they're going to let inflation run a little farther ahead so it can play catch up. We haven't been dealing with inflation for, God, more than a decade, basically, since the financial crisis, essentially. And they have to let it get back here because it's a healthy part of the economy when it's running about 2%. And, I think a lot of the headlines here was the month of April, inflation was about 4%. And obviously part of that was part of the economy trying to restart real quick as the pandemic was coming to an end, and supply chain issues. So some of that is short-term inflation, but we're certainly going to continue to see some of this grow as the economy and all the stimulus money gets spent. A lot more money chasing fewer goods. That's what inflation is.
At least we hope it's short-lived. Chris, my question is, if people are out there buying these goods at these higher prices, once the supply chain issues do get resolved and things are back to normal, what are the company's motivations to drop prices if people have been buying them at these higher prices?
Yeah, they don't have any motivation. If they can sell everything on the shelf as is or at higher prices, look at 2x4s,
Right.
building materials, all of that. You're certainly not going to see that. And,
And
you're
construction
seeing
of
that
houses hasn't slowed down because of this.
correct. Yeah, the housing market's one of, all over the country. I just read recently, Peter, the average home price in California, the average for the whole state is $800,000. Can you imagine that?
Mm. Well, Chris, I don't know if there's a vacuum there when those homes get vacated, because I don't know if the next generation is going to be able to afford, nor do they want to buy those $800,000 average home price kind of homes. So yeah, just some questions there, but certainly considering inflation is something that we need to do in our planning for retirement. Item number 10 on the list, Chris, review and update your legal documents. Now, you're not an attorney, but you know where these documents do need to be addressed and updated. And oftentimes you are helping your clients identify that and encouraging them to address this and take care of it. And you've got some relationships that you work with competent planning attorneys that can do those jobs, right?
Absolutely. And we do a fair amount of that for our clients because it's important that they have a durable power of attorney, a durable, for healthcare and for finance, having their living wills, their HIPAA documents, whether or not they need a trust for more elaborate estate planning or just a basic will, and transfer on death and updating beneficiaries. All those things are very important. So it's nice to be able to coordinate and into, kind of push them into getting these things done. A quick example, client was recently at age 61, had a massive heart attack, and it was the widowmaker, and thankfully he survived it. But it prompted him to get everything in order. So, try to be a little bit more proactive than that, because you can't get your power of attorney if you're in a vegetative state. So you want to do these things ahead of time, and it's not for you. You're making everybody else, their lives easier. That's going to have to administer it anyway and go to court to get the guardianship or the right to do it. So go ahead and do it ahead of time. Then you can pick and choose who you want to do.
But certainly these are the things that you cannot get done the day after you need to have had them done. So planning is proactive, ladies and gentlemen. That's what all the items on this list are about, is being proactive so that you can be more confident and stable in your security throughout retirement. If you missed any of the items on this checklist, if you'd like a recap to be able to go over it on your own time, pick up the phone, give a call to Mcintire Retirement Services, request the checklist of the 10 steps to prepare for retirement. And if you'd like to formulate answers to any of these issues, that's what the value of tuning in right now is that you can get a complimentary review strategy session. You can get a game plan for retirement, your game plan for retirement, put together along with the help of a qualified, experienced professional in Chris Mcintire, your resource here on the program, ladies and gentlemen. Pick up the phone again for the list, for the opportunity for the planning review and the strategy session, 800-868-1194. That's 800-868-1194. And Chris, we always appreciate the resources that you provide here on the program and the resource of the ability to get our plans put together with you. Thank you very much.
It's my pleasure, Peter. Hope everybody has a good rest of the weekend. And again, happy Father's Day to all of you.
Visit McIntyreRetirementServices.com for many additional valuable resources, including other great episodes of Game Plan for Retirement with Chris Mcintire. Be sure to subscribe.
The content of this radio show is provided for informational purposes only and is not a solicitation or recommendation of any investment strategy. You are encouraged to seek investment, tax, or legal advice from an independent professional advisor. Any investments and/or investment strategies mentioned involve risk, including the possible loss of principal. Advisory services offered through Brookstone Capital Management, a registered investment advisor.
Fiduciary duty extends solely to investment advisory advice and does not extend to other activities such as insurance or broker-dealer services. Advisory clients are charged a quarterly fee for assets under management, while insurance products pay a commission, which may result in a conflict of interest regarding compensation.
Any comments regarding safe and secure investments and guaranteed income streams refer only to fixed insurance products. They do not refer in any way to securities or investment advisory products. Indexed or fixed annuities are not designed for short-term investments and may be subject to caps, restrictions, fees, and surrender charges as described in the annuity contract.